My sister called me a fat cow and said she wouldn't invite me to her wedding if I didn't lose weight. I did IT and look better than her. Now she refused to invite me 'cause everyone would stare at me instead of her. So, I told about it. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but here I am. My name is Emma, and I'm 33 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've been the smart one in the family. You know the type, straight A's, perfect attendance, always with my nose in a book. While other kids were having sleepovers and going to parties, I was studying for the next big test. Or working on extra credit assignments. My younger sister Isabella, who's now 30, was always the complete opposite. While I was burning the midnight oil over textbooks, she was sneaking out to parties. Our parents, Tom and Sarah Matthews, somehow found this endearing. "Oh, that's just Bella being Bella," they'd say with a laugh whenever she'd come home past curfew or fail another class. Don't get me wrong, I loved being successful academically. It gave me a sense of purpose, and I genuinely enjoyed learning. But sometimes, I couldn't help but notice how differently our parents treated us. Isabella could do no wrong, even when she was clearly in the wrong. After graduating at the top of my class in both high school and college, I landed a prestigious job at a consulting firm. The pay was excellent, but the hours were brutal. 14-hour days became my norm, and somewhere between client meetings and endless presentations, my health took a back seat. Fast food became my best friend, quick, convenient, and always there when I needed it. Another burger, Isabella would smirk during our monthly family dinners at our parents' house. "You know, they say you are what you eat." I'd try to brush it off, but her words stung. What made it worse was watching our parents chuckle along with her. They never once told her to stop, never once considered how their laughter might affect me. "Oh, honey, she's just teasing," Mom would say if I ever showed signs of being hurt. You know how sisters are. But I did know how sisters were supposed to be, and this wasn't it. Sisters were supposed to support each other, have each other's backs. Instead, I got monthly doses of ridicule served with a side of parental amusement. "Well, at least one of us can afford their own meals," I'd sometimes reply, which would earn me disapproving looks from our parents. Isabella, despite working at a boutique that barely paid above minimum wage, somehow always managed to wear designer clothes and carry the latest handbags. I never understood how she managed it, until I overheard Mom and Dad discussing how much they helped her with her expenses. The dynamics of our family were clear. Isabella was the golden child who could do no wrong, and I was the responsible one they could always count on, especially financially. It wasn't unusual for them to call me asking for loans that were never repaid, always with the excuse that family helps family. I threw myself even harder into my work, using it as an excuse to skip some of those family dinners. The weight kept creeping up, but I told myself it didn't matter. I was successful, independent, and making more money than most people my age. So what if I couldn't fit into my old clothes anymore? So what if Isabella's jokes got more pointed and cruel with each passing month? But then came the phone call that would change everything. It was a regular Tuesday evening, and I was just settling in with my usual takeout dinner when my phone lit up with Isabella's name. "Emma, oh my God, you'll never believe it." She squealed into the phone. "Jack proposed. I'm getting married in 6 months." My heart did a little flip. Despite everything, she was still my sister, and this was a big moment. "That's wonderful, Bella. Congratulations." "Thanks. And since you're my sister, I want you to help with the planning. Well, mainly with the expenses, you know, since you're doing so well and all." There it was, the real reason for the call. But I pushed aside my cynicism and tried to focus on the positive. Maybe this would be our chance to finally bond a sister should. Little did I know that this wedding would become the catalyst for a complete transformation in my life. Just not in the way anyone expected. The weeks following Isabella's engagement announcement were a whirlwind of activity, none of which actually involved me. My parents took charge of the planning alongside Isabella, while my role seemed limited to being their personal ATM. Every few days, I'd receive a text with another amount to transfer, always accompanied by vague explanations about necessary expenses. "The venue deposit is due," Mom would say, "and you know your sister can't afford it on her boutique salary." I kept telling myself this was normal, that this was what family did for each other. But the amounts were getting ridiculous, and I was starting to feel like a human piggy bank rather than a sister of the bride. One evening, after transferring yet another substantial sum for what Isabella claimed was essential flower arrangements, I received a text that would change everything. "By the way, you need to lose weight if you want to be at my wedding," Isabella's message read. "I can't have a fat cow standing next to me in the photos. It would ruin everything." I stared at my phone, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. Just when I thought her cruelty couldn't surprise me anymore, she managed to outdo herself. With shaking hands, I called our parents, hoping they'd finally see how cruel their precious younger daughter was being. I should have known better. "Well, honey," Mom said hesitantly, "Isabella has a point. It is her special day, and the photos will last forever. Maybe this could be the motivation you need to finally do something about your situation." "Your mother's right," Dad chimed in. "We're just concerned about your health, sweetheart. And well, the wedding photos are important." I hung up feeling numb. The betrayal cut deep. Not just from Isabella, but from our parents too. They'd always favored her, but this was a new low. That night, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by the remnants of another takeout dinner, and really looked at myself. Not just my reflection in the mirror, but my whole life. How had I let things get to this point? When had I started accepting this treatment as normal? The next morning, I did something I'd been considering for months, but had always talked myself out of. I scheduled an appointment with a psychologist. Dr. Sarah Chen's office was warm and inviting, nothing like the cold clinical space I'd imagined. "Tell me why you're here, Emma," she said, her kind eyes studying my face. The whole story came pouring out, the family dynamics, Isabella's wedding, the constant belittling, and my parents' enabling behavior. Dr. Chen listened without judgment, occasionally nodding. "What strikes me," she said when I finished, "is that you're framing this entire situation around your sister's wedding and your family's expectations. But, Emma, what do you want for yourself?" I sat there, stunned. It was such a simple question, but I realized I'd never really asked myself that before. "I want to be healthy," I finally said. "Not for Isabella's wedding photos, not for my parents' approval, but for me. I want to feel good in my own skin." Dr. Chen smiled. "That's where we start then. This isn't about your sister's wedding, it's about you taking control of your life. Are you ready for that?" For the first time in years I felt a spark of hope. "Yes," I said firmly. "I'm ready." Little did I know this was just the beginning of a journey that would change not just my body, but my entire life. The next few months became a blur of activity, but for once, it wasn't work consuming all my time. I made some radical changes to my schedule, starting with hiring an assistant to help manage my workload. It was an expense I'd been avoiding, but now I realized my health was worth the investment. I found a personal trainer, Michael, who didn't sugarcoat things but wasn't cruel either. "You're not starting from zero," he told me during our first session. "You've got determination, I can see it in your eyes. We're just going to redirect it from your work to your health." The first few weeks were hell. My body screamed in protest at every workout, and my mind rebelled against the new dietary restrictions. No more convenient takeout meals. Everything had to be planned and prepared in advance. "I can't do this," I texted Dr. Chen after a particularly brutal training session. "You can't or you don't want to," she replied. "Remember, Emma, this isn't about your sister anymore. This is about you choosing yourself." Those words became my mantra. Every time I wanted to quit, every time I craved my old comfort foods, I reminded myself, this is about choosing myself. Meanwhile, my family was wrapped up in wedding preparations. Their calls became less frequent, and when they did call, it was usually about money. I started declining their financial requests, citing my new health-related expenses. "What health expenses?" Isabella scoffed during one call. "Jenny Craig isn't that expensive." I didn't bother explaining about the trainer, the nutritionist, or the therapy sessions. They didn't deserve to know about my journey. This was mine. As weeks turned into months, the changes became noticeable. My clothes started feeling looser, my energy levels soared, and for the first time in years, I actually looked forward to my reflection in the mirror. But the biggest change wasn't physical, it was mental. Through my sessions with Dr. Chen, I started understanding the toxic patterns in my family relationships, how I'd always been the responsible one, the bank, the emotional punching bag, how I'd accepted their treatment because I thought that's what family meant. Family doesn't mean accepting, Dr. Chen told me. Love shouldn't come with conditions. 5 months into my transformation, I barely recognized myself. The physical changes were dramatic. I'd lost a significant amount of weight, toned up, and even changed my hairstyle and wardrobe. But the mental changes were even more profound. I stood straighter, spoke more competently, and most importantly, I'd learned to set boundaries. Then came the invitation to a family dinner at my parents' house. It would be the first time they'd see me in months. I stood in front of my closet considering what to wear, when my phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. Mom says you're coming to dinner tomorrow. Try not to embarrass yourself by wearing something too tight. We all know how you look in fitted clothes. I smiled at the phone, something I wouldn't have done months ago. Then I reached for my newest purchase, a fitted black dress that hugged every new curve. It was time to show my family the new Emma, whether they were ready for it or not. The sound of my heels clicking against the sidewalk leading to my parents' house felt different that evening. Each step was purposeful, confident. I'd spent extra time on my appearance. My new hairstyle was perfectly styled, my makeup subtle but flattering, and my black dress fit like a glove. I rang the doorbell, my heart pounding but my spine straight. Mom opened the door, and for a moment, she just stared, her mouth slightly open. Behind her, I could see Isabella frozen in the doorway to the dining room, her face a mix of shock and something else. Was that anger? Emma, Mom finally managed. Is that really you? I stepped inside, enjoying the dramatic effect of my entrance more than I probably should have. Hi, Mom. Yes, it's really me. Dad appeared from the living room, doing a double take when he saw me. The silence was deafening. No one commented on how good I looked, how healthy I appeared, or congratulated me on my obvious hard work. Instead, Isabella's eyes narrowed, and she turned on her heel, stalking back to the dining room. The tension during dinner was thick enough to cut with a knife. I served myself a modest portion of salad and grilled chicken, ignoring the pasta and bread that would have been my go-to choices months ago. On another diet, Emma, Isabella finally spoke, her voice dripping with sarcasm. How long do you think this one will last? I took a small bite of my salad, chewed carefully, and swallowed before responding. It's not a diet, Isabella. It's a lifestyle change. Right, she snorted, stabbing at her plate with her fork. The sound of metal scraping against china made me wince. Mom and Dad remained unusually quiet, picking at their food and exchanging worried glances. The rest of the dinner passed in uncomfortable silence, broken only by the increasingly aggressive sound of Isabella's fork against her plate. I left early, citing work commitments the next day. As I drove home, I felt lighter, and not just physically. I'd survived dinner without falling into old patterns, no apologizing for my success, no shrinking to make others comfortable. The next morning my phone rang while I was getting ready for work. It was Isabella. You're not coming to my wedding, she spat without preamble. I sat down at my vanity, staring at my reflection. Excuse me? You heard me. You're not invited anymore, you'll ruin everything. How exactly would I ruin your wedding, Isabella? I kept my voice calm, even as my hand gripped the phone tighter. Don't play dumb. Everyone who knows you, they'll be staring at you instead of me. They'll be talking about your stupid weight loss instead of my special day. You did this on purpose, didn't you? You couldn't stand that for once? Something was about me instead of you. I listened to her rant, feeling a strange sense of calm. This was exactly what Dr. Chen had warned me about, how some people in our lives resist when we make positive changes. Isabella? I cut in when she paused for breath. This had nothing to do with you or your wedding. I did this for myself. Oh, please. You've never done anything for yourself. You've always been too busy being perfect at everything else. The irony of her statement wasn't lost on me. Before I could respond, she hung up. I immediately drove to my parents' house, hoping they'd see reason. They were my parents, after all. Surely they'd understand how ridiculous this was. I was wrong. Your sister has a point, Emma. Mom said, wringing her hands as we sat in their living room. This is her special day, and well, you have to admit, your transformation is quite distracting. I stared at her, wondering if I'd heard correctly. Distracting? I got healthy, Mom. How is that a problem? Don't be naive, Dad chimed in, his voice stern. You know exactly what you're doing. This whole change. It's just another way for you to outshine your sister, isn't it? What? Oh, please. Mom's voice turned sharp. You'll probably try to find yourself a husband at the wedding, or worse, try to steal Jack's attention from Isabella. I felt like I'd stepped into some bizarre alternate reality. Are you seriously suggesting I lost weight and got healthy to steal my sister's fiancé? Well, why else would you do it right before her wedding? Mom demanded. I stood up, my hands shaking. Maybe, just maybe, I did it for myself. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? Because in this family, everything has to be about Isabella. Now, Emma, Dad's voice took on that patronizing tone I'd grown to hate. Don't be dramatic. We just need you to send your wedding gift through us. And perhaps it's best if you stay away from the wedding. For everyone's sake. That was it, the final straw. Years of favoritism, manipulation, and emotional crystallized in that moment into perfect clarity. My wedding gift, I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean the thousands of dollars I've already spent on this wedding? The money you've been demanding from me for months? That gift? Emma, Mom started, but I cut her off. No. I'm done. I'm done being your ATM. I'm done being Isabella's punching bag. I'm done with all of it. I walked out of their house without looking back, my head held high. As I drove home, a plan formed in my mind. It was time to tell my story. That evening, I sat at my computer and began typing. I detailed everything, the years of emotional the financial exploitation, the wedding drama. I included screenshots of Isabella's cruel messages, the texts demanding money, and her final wedding invitation. Before hitting post, I took a deep breath. This wasn't about revenge, it was about finally speaking my truth. I wasn't prepared for what happened next. Within an hour of sharing my story, my phone started buzzing non-stop with notifications. Comments, shares, and messages began flooding in. At first I was scared to look, but when I finally did, I was overwhelmed by the support. Your sister sounds toxic, one comment read. You're better off without her. I went through something similar with my family, another person shared. Standing up for yourself is the hardest but most important thing you can do. Then came Isabella's comment, dripping with her usual sarcasm. Nice creative writing, sis, always trying to make yourself the victim. Those messages are obviously fake, and you're just jealous of my happiness. Her friends quickly jumped to her defense, calling me attention-seeking and pathetic. Some even claimed I doctored the screenshots. But for every negative comment, there were dozens of supportive ones. I logged off social media, needing space to process everything. Work became my sanctuary, spreadsheets and client meetings were far simpler than family drama. But when I finally checked my accounts again days later, I was stunned. The story had gone viral. Thousands of people had shared it, and my inbox was overflowing with messages of support. Thank you for sharing this, one message read. Your story gave me the courage to stand up to my own toxic family. The story kept spreading, with people eagerly following the saga and offering words of encouragement. My follower count skyrocketed, but that wasn't what mattered. What touched me was how many people related to my experience, how many had dealt with similar family dynamics. Then the calls from Isabella started. I ignored Isabella's calls for days, but she wouldn't give up. Then one evening, while I was preparing my dinner, grilled chicken with roasted vegetables, a far cry from my old takeout habits, I heard aggressive pounding on my door. Emma, open this door right now. Isabella's voice echoed through the hallway. I took my time walking to the door, my heart racing but my resolve firm. When I opened it, I barely recognized my sister. Her face was red, mascara smeared under her eyes. How dare you, she screamed, pushing past me into my apartment. Do you have any idea what you've done? I closed the door calmly, though my hands were shaking. I told the truth, Isabella, that's all. The truth? She laughed hysterically. You've made me look like a monster. Jack's mother read everything. She's furious. She's threatening to call off the wedding unless I apologize to her. I raised an eyebrow. His mother? Isabella's voice cracked. She's overweight. She saw what I said about fat cows and now she thinks I'm some kind of horrible person. Aren't you? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Isabella's face contorted with rage. You need to fix this. Take down that post right now and write that it was all a lie. Say you made it up because you're jealous of my happiness. I shook my head. No. What do you mean no? If you don't, we'll never speak to you again. A calm settled over me as I realized this was an empty threat. Is that supposed to be a punishment, Isabella? Never speaking to the sister who's only ever been your personal bank and emotional punching bag? You ungrateful thing, she shrieked. After everything we've done for you, everything you've done for me, I cut her off. You mean the years of mockery? The constant demands for money? The cruel messages? What exactly should I be grateful for? Get out, I said firmly, opening my door, and don't come back. She stood there, mouth open in shock. You can't be serious. I am. Get out. As I closed the door on her screaming face, I felt something shift inside me. This was what real strength felt like. The calls from my parents came next, as I knew they would. They were desperate, saying Isabella's wedding was falling apart. The venue was booked, half the expenses were paid, and guests were already making travel arrangements. You have to fix this, Emma, Mom pleaded. Your sister's happiness is at stake. What about my happiness? I asked quietly. Has that ever mattered to any of you? If you don't make this right, Dad's voice turned cold, we'll have no choice but to disown you. I almost laughed. Disown me? From what, the family that's only ever seen me as an ATM and emotional punching bag? I'll save you the trouble. I'm done. I hung up and blocked their numbers. Then I went to my closet and pulled out the expensive wedding gift I bought for Isabella weeks ago, a designer handbag she'd been hinting at for months. After a moment's consideration, I picked up my phone and searched for local women's shelters. The next day, I donated the handbag to a shelter that helped women rebuild their lives after leaving abusive situations. It felt right, turning something that represented my toxic family relationships into something that could help others. Weeks passed. Through the grapevine of distant relatives, I heard that Isabella's wedding had been called off. Jack had insisted she apologize to his mother, but she'd refused, saying she had nothing to be sorry for. Their relationship hadn't survived the conflict. Part of me felt sad, not for Isabella, but for the relationship we could have had if things had been different. But as Dr. Chen reminded me, you can't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. My life changed in ways I never expected. The viral post led to opportunities to speak about toxic family dynamics and self-worth. I started a support group for others dealing with similar situations. My story resonated with people because it wasn't just about weight loss, it was about finding the strength to choose yourself. These days, when I look in the mirror, I see someone I'm proud of. Yes, I'm healthier and more fit than I've ever been, but that's just the surface. The real transformation was learning to value myself, to set boundaries, and to understand that real family, whether blood or chosen, builds you up instead of tearing you down. Sometimes I wonder if Isabella and my parents ever understood what they lost. Not their ATM, not their emotional punching bag, but a daughter and sister who would have done anything for them if they just loved me for who I was. But that's their loss, not mine. I'm too busy living my best life to wonder for long. As for that wedding gift, I hear it's being used by a domestic violence survivor who just landed her first corporate job. She needed a professional bag for interviews, and now she has one. Sometimes the best endings aren't the ones we planned, they're the ones that help us become who we were always meant to be.